Hey ANPers, this is Dr. Jones checking in. This is ANP2 lecture test 4 and we're starting the digestive chapter, which is chapter 24, and for me that prints out the top of page 17, chapter 24, the digestive system. So this is, I believe, video 10, given that I'm pretty sure I skipped video 5 because I wrote down video 5 before I recorded it because I knew I'd start on page 8. And then I wrote video 6 underneath that when I started page 8. So yeah, the numbers are off. There's not a 5. Okay, so let's talk about our intro to the digestive system. So here's what it looks like at week 3. You've got the yolk sac and the amniotic cavity, and in between is the embryonic disc, and that was you. That's the baby. Okay, and so here you have it, and here's the little gut developing right here. Isn't that cute? And then at 4 weeks, you make a little digestive tube, and you start growing your mesenteries. Remember the superior and inferior mesenteric artery? They run in the mesenteries. And that's at 4 weeks, and then it starts to grow the pancreas and the liver, and those get separated off, and then eventually you have a digestive tract. Let me move me out of the way so you can see. At 6 weeks, here you get the little pancreas, the stomach, the liver, and you, I'm on screen, I think, you had a cloaca. A cloaca is when you only have one opening, like a urogenital opening for pee and poop and reproductive. Okay, so then at 8 weeks, the majority of your intestines were actually in your umbilical cord. And then they grow out as part of the umbilical cord, and then they move into your abdominal pelvic cavity. And so sometimes babies are born with all or part of their intestines, well, small intestines, in the umbilical cord, and how they fix it depends on how bad it is. Sometimes they just kind of smush them back in and sew it up, I think. So, not a surgeon, so it's pretty interesting. Oh, and then here you've got like a urogenital sinus, and then the rectum has split off as a separate opening by 10 weeks. And the urinary bladder is part of the allantois, but we'll get to that. So that's how these things developed inside you before you were born. So what all else do we need to know about the digestive system? There is nothing on this picture that you do not need to know. So let's go through this as an intro of basic concepts that you must learn. Okay. So the major divisions of the digestive tract, and then on this side it will show the accessory glands. And the difference between the tract and the glands, the accessory bits, is that the tract is the tube. So the digestive tract is a tube that goes from the mouth, oral cavity, oropharynx, laryngopharynx, esophagus, down to the stomach, and then on to the small intestine, squiggles, and then up the large intestine and out the anus. So it's one tube that goes all the way through. So if, like, say you had a thing, like a pitcher of orange juice, and you had a bendy straw, but like a good bendy straw that like bends the whole way across, not just one spot, and you dip a tube, a straw, in the orange juice with both ends in the air. And so you would, but under the level of the orange juice. So you would have a tube of air in the orange juice. So you would have a tube of outside inside. And that's what your digestive tract is. It's a tube of outside that's inside. I don't remember if we've discussed it this semester, but there are very few places in your body where you actually find air. Find dissolved oxygen, carbon dioxide, lots of places. But actual air, as in like gaseous, like breathing, like air, very few places. So we've got the respiratory system, right? The respiratory tract, the oral cavity, the oropharynx, laryngopharynx, larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, air. Okay, and then you also have the sinuses in the skull, the 4 different sinuses, and those have air in them normally, unless you have a sinus infection, and then they like fill with snot and like pound. Less fun. Much less fun. Less fun than it sounds. You have air in the external acoustic meatus, back to the tympanic cavity. You have air in the tympanic cavity, and that connects through the nasopharynx connects the middle ear to the nasopharynx here, like that. So that has air in it. You can have air in it when it pops open. Your digestive tract can have air in it, and it comes out one end or the other, usually with noises and smells, and is embarrassing, and we say, excuse me. And nasal cavities have air, and that's kind of it. There's not air in your blood, there's not air in your bones, there are gases dissolved in fluids, but there's not air. Okay, so the digestive tract and the respiratory tract, the sinuses and like the middle ear and the external ear, nasopharynx, are some of the few places that we actually have air in the body. Now you can get air in a marrow cavity inside the bone if you have a compound fracture and the bone has broken through the skin. And that's the only way to get air there. Unless you inject air in somebody, and that's super rude because that can kill them. So all of that, back to the tube. Your digestive tract is like a straw, a bendy straw, but with both ends up, dipped in a pitcher of orange juice with the ends still in the air, because it's outside, it's continuous with the air, has access to the air, but it is in fact housed inside your body. Okay, so the oral cavity, including the teeth and the tongue. The teeth and the tongue are accessories. They're not part of the digestive tract. The oral cavity is part of the digestive tract. And they do mechanical processing, moistening, mixing with salivary secretion. So basically chewing and spit, saliva. The pharynx is the back of the throat, as we discussed in the respiratory chapter, and that the point of this is to help you swallow. The esophagus moves things to the stomach, the gullet. The stomach does chemical breakdown and mechanical breakdown. So your stomach churns, and that helps break your food into smaller bits. And it does begin the chemical digestion. The chemical digestion does not end in the stomach. It continues through the small intestine. The small intestine, enzymatic digestion and absorption of water, organic substrates, vitamins, and ions. The majority of your actual chemical digestion takes place in the small intestine, and also the majority of your absorption of those nutrients. The large intestine, enzymatic digestion, absorption of water, organic substrates, vitamins, and ions. So the large intestine does like less than 10% of the digestion and absorption of the nutrients, but it does reabsorb water. So it takes the water out so that you don't have diarrhea all the time. And then here we have the salivary glands. There are 3 pairs of salivary glands. We will need to know these for both lecture and lab. This is all lecture and lab material. And the secretion of lubricating fluid containing enzymes that break down carbs. So if you've ever put like a cracker in your mouth and like just left it there and it kind of starts to dissolve, that's these enzymes that start the breakdown of carbs in your mouth. There's also an enzyme from your tongue that will start the breakdown of fats in your mouth. What never break down in your mouth, not chemical digestion anyway, but protein. So if you ever get like steak stuck in between your teeth, like it's there until you floss, because there's no enzyme in your mouth that breaks down proteins. And in fact, the enzyme in your stomach that breaks down proteins acts at a pH of like 1.5 to 2, and we can't do that in the mouth. It would just burn all your tissues away. The stomach is lined with a thick, what the book calls a carpet of mucus. Oh gosh. But that protects the cells, and that allows you to have a very acidic environment for that enzyme to work to digest the proteins. And the liver is part of the digestive system, but not part of the digestive tract. It secretes bile. Bile salts emulsify fats, which we will talk about again, but it basically breaks the big globs of fat down into smaller globs of fat so that the enzymes can digest them. So while the bile does not digest the fats per se, it does make the digestion happen more readily, more easily, because it breaks it down to smaller bits, more surface area to the volume so that you can get more done faster. The liver also stores nutrients, and as you know, it does lots of other things. It's a blood filter, it's a blood reservoir, it stores it. We'll get through it. The gallbladder stores and concentrates the bile, and what we'll find happens is when fatty foods hit the first part of the small intestine, it releases a hormone, cholecystokinin, but we'll get there, and that causes the walls of the gallbladder to squeeze, and that squeezes the bile out, and the bile along with the pancreatic juice together are squeezed here into this first part of the small intestine. We will learn all of these terms and details in great detail for both lecture and lab, so giving you just basic concepts to get you started. The pancreas, the endocrine pancreas we talked about is the islets of Langerhans, the pancreatic islets, and that makes the insulin, glucagon, GHIH, and PP, the polypeptide hormone. But the 99% of the pancreas is the exocrine pancreas, and it makes buffers and digestive enzymes. And so the digestive enzymes end up being what we call, well, with the buffers, called the pancreatic juice, and that ends up doing most of the chemical digestion in your system. So the pancreas is super important for digestion, both the digestive juices into the small intestine to do the chemical digestion, and also the insulin helps, once you get the digested nutrients into the bloodstream, to get those sugars and proteins into the cells. And then anything that's left in the large intestine after that gets pooped out. So we'll talk about that too. All right, anabolism. Back on the Noteset. So using nutrients as raw materials to make new materials is called anabolism. Breaking down food to provide energy and raw materials is catabolism. And the digestive system provides organic molecules, including carbs, fats, and proteins, and more that we will discuss when we get there. The digestive system is also called the alimentary system. The digestive tract is also called the GI tract. It is a tube from mouth to anus. We talked about the bendy straw. It includes the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, and large intestine. The accessory organs are the teeth, tongue, salivary glands, liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. 6 steps: ingestion, that's when you put the food in your face. What we normally call eating. Mechanical digestion and propulsion, that's chewing and swallowing. Chemical digestion is the beginnings of catabolism. Oh, it's so much fun to write on the screen. Secretion is when you secrete stuff into the GI tract. We talked about the stomach secretes a carpet of mucus that lines the inside of the stomach so that the hydrochloric acid doesn't dissolve your stomach cells. Very important. Absorption of nutrients, we touched on that. It starts a little bit in the stomach, but it's mostly in the small intestine, with I think less than 10% in the large intestine. So, and then defecation, that's pooping. And what you poop out are called feces or fecal matter. Everything you ever wanted to know about the peritoneum, but were afraid to ask. So the serosa is the same thing. I don't have that word. The serosa, and we're going to talk about it in great detail later, but for now, serosa is the visceral peritoneum. Now the parietal peritoneum lines the inside of the body wall. So the parietal peritoneum is this line here that goes around the outside. And you can see here the visceral peritoneum comes and surrounds the small intestine, all the tubes. These are the mesenteries. This running in between these two layers of mesentery are the superior and inferior mesenteric arteries. That's hence the name. And this lining the outer body wall is the parietal peritoneum. And you see how it covers the uterus, surrounds the large intestine. Okay, and you can see the pancreas, the duodenum are retroperitoneal. They're below the parietal peritoneal membrane. The uterus and ovaries are going to be infraperitoneal, where they're inferior to below the parietal peritoneum. So the parietal peritoneum does touch muscle like the diaphragm, the transversus abdominis, and things like that. So, okay, where are we on time? I put a timer on. I paused it. I was like, oh, I'm not quite ready to start the video, and so I paused it. Should we do another page, or should we cut it here? Let's cut it here just in case. I want to get this loaded to YouTube as quickly as possible so that y'all can get started on digestion. All right, so we will start with this page for the next video. So we are starting here. We did the intro pictures and page 17. This has been NP2, lecture test 4, video number 10, which is actually the 9th video because I skipped 5. And thank you as always for tuning in. The education must go on. And then I find Command, Control, and Escape. Escape's the short one. Cool. Thanks, guys.